with some of his perspective. Lance, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Well, let's start off with the look of this natural and national disaster on the airline industry itself. Undoubtedly, it's an industry that now faces a hefty bill for lost revenues.
Good afternoon, Alicia. Absolutely. Extremely concerning. Where we currently sit at the moment is estimated losses, and conservative estimated losses are in excess of $200 million US per day. I could give a few more numbers that will exemplify this. 750,000 passengers are currently put out of place at the moment per day. And over 70,000 flights have been cancelled. So there is a serious impact from that. But this economic loss, primarily in the European theatre, goes a lot further, because that excludes losses like repositioning of aircraft, putting people up in hotels, etc., etc.
Well, undeniably, I mean, the flight lockdown has caused much disruption. Let's look at the extent of the problem, because at this stage, it really seems like no one knows just how long it's going to go on for.
Indeed, and I think that makes sense, because it depends on a number of factors. Factors from wind flows to the extent which this volcano will continually keep erupting. And a volcano with such a nice name like Jala, and it just keeps erupting.
A name that nobody can pronounce.
We give it a try. And it's in southeast Iceland. So a lot depends on how the wind flows, which way it goes, and the extent and the flight levels to which this dust and volcanic ash go to.
Yeah. Despite what you've said, and despite the uncertainties that still prevail, I mean, there's quite a bit of debate around the ripple effect that this is going to have. Some on the one quarter saying that the UK economy should escape any lasting damage, while we've got others saying that the eruption could derail what is a fragile economic recovery to start off with if it lasts much longer. So given all that you've said and those startling figures that you've also put out on the table, what's your position with regards to impact on the UK economy itself?
I think undoubtedly every hour has an impact. Lasting is a very long word, so it will never be forever. Remember, a lot of other things happen in this time. We're talking about the revenue loss. Okay, there are certain costs that are not expended at the time, but there are other issues that also come into play. A number of passengers are waiting still to do their flights, so they can put out a meeting for a day, 2, 3, 4, week, 2 weeks. So I think in the big picture one has to be more positive, and I'm very confident that airlines themselves, let's take out the airspace control, are doing everything in their power, and IATA believes, to try and find solutions. Different faster acceleration rates, trying to particularly focus on certain corridors to fly through. And I can carry on, but there are a number of initiatives being taken by the airlines to, as soon as possible, get operations back to normal.
Well, Fani highlighted that for him a major problem presents itself for the consumer itself, the traveller, him or herself. I mean, who's footing the bill here? Are airlines themselves absolved from having to compensate their customers for any inconvenience caused?
Alicia, there's not a single answer to this. It depends in which theatre, which jurisdiction that aircraft is registered. There are far more stringent disciplines employed on European aircraft. If they were registered in the European community, in terms of putting people up in hotels, giving them food, all the basics, and it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So I cannot give you a single answer, but what I can say is the impact differs radically from area to area. I mean, as you can see, and as Fani correctly said, it's a global impact. We are now reliant on what's going to happen in the European theatre. At what point are they going to open certain corridors, also subject to the safety control?
Well, of course, Fani is the voice of just one African airline. I mean, more broadly speaking, how have airlines been hit? Because we know certainly when it comes to Kenya, we know that a lot of their horticultural and agricultural exports are reliant on these airlines to be up and flying all the time. So just what kind of impacts have come through from the broader African territories?
Undoubtedly, there's a definite impact, especially regarding perishable goods. Other goods can wait a short while. Perishable goods have implications. However, I'm confident that the key airports that do handle perishable goods have facilities to look after that environment. Also, you know what Fani said, and he correctly said, the important thing for airlines who are carrying cargo, whether it be belly cargo or full freighter cargo, is to ensure that their clients whose cargo they are carrying are fully warned, forewarned, and kept up to date, so as not to bring perishables into that arena too early. Obviously, there's an impact. Things do roll out. But remember, the impact that happens in Europe, it's not only affecting African airlines. If a Kenya Airways flight, Ethiopian Airways flight, a South African Airways flight cannot get into a certain theatre, nobody else can either.
Yeah.
They are ready to go. They're organised, and at the first opportunity, they will find those corridors and they'll enter that airspace.
In that context, what's your or IATA's comment on where we stand and how this whole thing has been handled by the European governments?
IATA is disappointed at this stage that certain actions were not taken earlier, primarily to get the various players in that theatre up to 5 days to get a teleconference together. But there are a couple of other steps. We also get concerned about the fact that the decisions made on closing airspace are not based on real live data, but based on models, academic models. So that does concern us, that more focus should be on the reality on the ground. Never misunderstanding that safety always comes first. That's not a negotiable. The decisions made by the various governments or the European community just to blanketly shut down airspace, I think was not fully covered. Not that the decision was wrong, but the way it was made is incorrect. You should get all stakeholders, airlines involved, air traffic navigational suppliers, the ANSPs, they're the ones who actually reclosing the airspace. But we are asking, find corridors that are safe and that we can enter now.
It's a very tricky line to be walking, though, and you know, uncharted territories, considering the fact that, as you said earlier, there's so many uncertainties with regards to the way the wind's going to be blowing.
Exactly, but you put all that in the model. You don't just base a blanket decision on, look, it doesn't look too good. There's massive impact and implications. There have been other volcanoes over time, none as vast as this, but the implication here, financially and economically, exceeds 9/11. What we're also asking going ahead is that manufacturers of engines and aircraft start looking at models at what point and what density of ash, etc., or other, can the aircraft fly safely without damage. Once again, I do reiterate, safety always comes first, but we have to look at the entire global holistic model.